All right, obviously it's game day Monday morning, 49ers and the Jets on Monday Night Football Week 1, the final game of the Week 1 schedule in the NFL. I'll talk a little bit more about that. By the way, thank you for watching this YouTube video. Please be sure to subscribe and like and comment and all that stuff as we grow this thing out a little further. Talk a little bit more about tonight's matchup, but first I wanted to touch base with you about what happened last night at Levi's Stadium. 49ers inducted Frank Gore into the 49ers Hall of Fame. It was a really cool ceremony with a lot of former players coming back and coaches coming back. And of course, Frank, the evening was capped with him putting on the red jacket as 49er Hall of Famer, and also the unveiling of a statue with him running the football. If you've never been to the 49ers Museum and the Hall of Fame within the museum, at some point check it out, because all of the inductees are shown in action poses, not just a bust, but it's an action shot that kind of is the iconic memory or thought of each of the inductees. So with Frank, the moment I walked through the door, I picked up a program and I saw that the MC of the ceremony was Alex Smith, and I thought, oh, that's awkward, because he can't make it. I just saw him on TV in the morning in his ESPN analyst role, and he was in the studio in Connecticut. So I do realize there are these things called planes, but I thought, well, that's a kind of a tough ask for Alex to come all the way from the East Coast in a short period of time. Later, when I talked to him and I told him that, I was like, wow, I wasn't really expecting to see you here. And he goes, because it's Frank Gore, I was going to be here no matter what it took. And he gave a really nice talk about Frank. And those two came in together. Alex wasn't even 21 years old. He was the #1 overall pick in that draft, 2005. Frank Gore, a lot of injuries in his college career at Miami. 49ers took him at the top of the 3rd round, and boy, what a durable player, 1,600 yards rushing in his career, #3 all time. So what a phenomenal career for Frank Gore. A couple of the things that one of the things Alex talked about was, and it really is probably the fondest memory or the most indelible memory that I have of Frank Gore as a player, and it didn't even happen in a game. In 2009, the 49ers were practicing joint practice up in Napa against the Raiders, and you learn a little bit more about it. I remember it very vividly. Talking to Frank after the event, he said that Tom Rathman was a very tough coach. Of course, Tom Rathman, also a member of the 49ers Hall of Fame, but he challenged Frank to do the job in a blitz pickup drill against the Raiders. And he got Frank so fired up, challenging him to do a good job, that it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen on the practice field, where practically the whole practice stopped because each position group is doing their own thing, and whether it's one-on-one receiver versus cornerback, whether it's defensive lineman against offensive lineman, but in this corner of the field was the blitz pickup. And Frank Gore not only stopped every linebacker, and it's a drill setup for the defense. They're 10-yard running start, all that stuff. The running back is in a very, the odds are stacked against the running back in that kind of drill. But Frank would pick up a linebacker and just drill him into the ground and then stay on top of him. He was so fired up, and they had to pull him off of every Raiders linebacker, and he just went through that entire linebacking core of the Raiders and took everybody apart, including Kirk Morrison, who played a long time in the NFL. So that was something that, when you think about Frank Gore, and I remember him saying after that was Tom Rathman says that, anybody can run the football, anybody can catch passes out of the football, or out of the backfield, but what really separates you is your ability, your willingness to block. And so that's story number one. And another thing that struck me, and I always think about Frank in this term, back in 2011, when the 49ers players were getting together called Camp Alex. It was that lockout, and Harbaugh had just come in, and there was Alex was unsigned for the following season, but he had already agreed, kind of a handshake agreement to re-sign with the 49ers. There was one day that the lockout ended, or just it went on pause for one day. And Alex Smith went into the facility in Santa Clara, met with Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh, and ended up leaving with like a box of materials as the 49ers were installing a new offense. So basically, Alex Smith was entrusted with setting up, coaching his teammates with this new offense, because the coaches couldn't have any interaction with the players. The one guy who wasn't there at San Jose State was Frank Gore. And Frank in those days would always train in Miami so that he get in tip-top shape. So when training camp would open, he'd be ready to go. And so he wasn't at those practices. And I remember pulling Alex aside. I said, all this stuff is great, with all your teammates here, but the one guy that this offense is basically built around, he's not here. Is that a concern? And I remember Alex looking at me and saying, "You talking about Frank?" And I go, "Yeah, of course." And he goes, "Oh my gosh," he goes, "Frank is the last person I have to worry about. When Frank sees it once, it's locked in there. He's like the smartest football guy ever. So we need to get all these other guys up to speed, because Frank will totally take care of himself." And so that always struck me. And you could see the admiration throughout both of their careers that Alex had for Frank, Frank had for Alex, and it was really on display last night in Santa Clara as Frank Gore goes into the 49ers Hall of Fame. So a really cool thing. A lot of familiar faces. It was a great evening. Okay, let's turn our attention a little bit to the game tonight, and I'll talk more about this after 1 p.m. when the 49ers make some roster moves to get you set for Monday Night Football. One of the things that I asked Kyle Shanahan about on Saturday was how he prepares for play calling. He anticipates what the defense is going to do on any given down and distance. And, the play call has built-in contingencies in case they're surprised and it's not the defense they're expecting to see. But a lot of it is kind of guessing or anticipating what the defense is going to do. So I asked him about, are there any challenges, because Robert Saleh's defense so well. Jeff Ulbrich is the 49ers, or former 49ers linebacker, current Jets defensive coordinator. He's the one who calls the plays, but still, Shanahan is very familiar with the Jets scheme. And so I asked about, is there this cat and mouse of, what they do, but also they know what you're thinking. So, a few wrinkles in here, one of those, that I know that blah, blah, blah. And what Shanahan said was he really thinks that maybe more than ever this game will just come down to the players executing. And he says, that's what I like about Saleh's scheme. That's why I like our scheme. There's not a lot of guessing to it. It's a very sound scheme, and there's not a lot of holes in it. If you have good players and you have a scheme that doesn't have holes, it's tough to expose it on offense. And he basically said that, why he handpicked that particular scheme. Now, Saleh wasn't his first choice as defensive coordinator, but he knew what the scheme he wanted to have implemented with the 49ers is that, that Seattle cover 3. And what Shanahan said was, the goal is you don't want to be reckless on defense and give the offense a lot of opportunities for easy gashes. You can coach them coming off the ball as a D-line coach. You can coach them running and hitting and tackling, and you need to make offenses work for every little thing they do. When you don't have that type of scheme, or you don't have those types of players to run that scheme, you have to get over aggressive as a play caller. And he goes, you've got to time it out perfectly, and there's a lot of risk, but there's also a lot of reward. So basically what he's saying is there are no secrets. 49ers practiced against that scheme every day in practice. Heck, the Jets practiced offensively against their own scheme in practice, which is what they'll be seeing with the 49ers. So it really does come down to the execution, and if the 49ers are in sync in this game, it's going to be tough because they didn't have the full training camp of all those offensive players together. So we'll see how this thing turns out tonight. And once again, I will post another video a little after 1. That's when Trent Williams has to be removed from the reserve did not report list. 49ers have to make a roster move there. And I also expect a couple of players to come up from the practice squad to compensate for some guys who are going to be out in this game. Guys that we don't expect will play in this game Monday night would be Yetur Gross-Matos, a backup defensive end, rotational guy who also can slide inside to rush the pass rusher or rush the passer in nickel situations. So he's not going to play in this game due to a knee injury. Talanoa Hufanga won't play, so they'll probably bring up a safety in place of him, and also a defensive end in place of Gross-Matos, and then D. Winters, who would have had a role on special teams. He's out for this game as well. So check back a little after 1, and we'll bring you all up to date on the comings and goings and how the 49ers roster looks for this game. And once again, if you get a chance, please subscribe, like, comment, and thank you again for joining me here on my YouTube channel.